There's a moment that comes softly, like a whisper in the wind, a subtle shift in your attention. You're walking down the street, or lying in bed, or staring out a window, and suddenly you feel it. A quiet tug in the chest, a knowing that doesn't arrive with evidence, but with certainty. Something is trying to tell you something. Or is it someone? Or is it just you? We've all had those moments. A sudden impulse to call a friend, a dream that felt more real than waking life, a gut feeling that saved us from something we couldn't have predicted. And in those moments we often wonder, was that intuition? Was that divine guidance? Was that me? Or something far beyond me? This is the calling within. It doesn't shout, it doesn't push, it whispers, in symbols, in nudges, in feelings that make no sense and yet feel truer than logic. This calling has existed for as long as humans have, and across the world, through every culture and time, people have named it differently. Some call it the soul, others, the higher self. Many speak of spirit guides, entities of love, light, or ancestral wisdom, and some see it as the voice of God. But all agree, there is something within, or around us, that guides. This video is a journey into that mystery, a deep dive into the question, when you feel guided, who or what is really guiding you? Is it an external consciousness, a spirit, an angel, an ancestor walking beside you unseen? Or is it your own inner being, the part of you untouched by fear or doubt? Or could it be both? Expressions of the same source, mirrored through different lenses. We'll explore ancient teachings and cutting-edge neuroscience. We'll enter the stories of mystics and mediums, monks and ordinary people who have heard a voice, not their own. We'll question everything, including ourselves. Because to understand guidance, real, soul-deep guidance, we must become still enough to listen. Not just outwardly, but inwardly. Not just to answers, but to the silence behind the answers. And so we begin here, not with fact, but with feeling. Not with conclusions, but with curiosity. What is this presence that calls us inward? And where does it come from? For some, it began in childhood. A voice no one else could hear. A friend no one else could see. They were told it was imagination, but it felt more real than anything else. Later, it may have returned in moments of crisis, when everything fell apart, and yet something inside whispered, "Keep going." It is in these vulnerable moments that guidance speaks most clearly. When the mind is quieted by grief or awe or surrender, and suddenly, something answers, and something answers. But who is answering? Is it your future self? Is it an ancestor guiding from the other side? And that is another side, a guardian angel assigned since birth. Or is it the deeper you that exists before thought, beyond identity? The ancient mystic said, "Know thyself, and you will know the universe." Could it be that the inner voice and the spirit guide are not two but one, wearing different faces depending on what you need? In this chapter we won't answer yet. Instead we'll step into the mystery together, because it is the mystery that calls you, and the act of listening, truly listening, is the beginning of sacred guidance. Feel the silence that follows it. That silence is sacred. It is the space where answers are born. We are never truly alone. Even in our solitude, something watches with love. Whether that something is your soul, or a spirit guide, or the universe itself, it doesn't matter yet. What matters is the feeling of being held, direct, nudged gently forward. Many people resist this idea. They say it's just coincidence. It's your brain making patterns. And maybe sometimes it is. But what if the pattern itself is intelligent? What if the brain is not just making up meaning, but perceiving meaning that is already there, waiting to be seen? When we trust our inner knowing, we move through the world differently. Not as passive observers, but as participants in something greater. Life begins to feel like a conversation, a dialogue between you and the invisible. Synchronicities appear. Numbers repeat. The right person calls. The book falls off the shelf, and you feel it again, that quiet voice inside whispering, "This way." Some call this guidance fate, others divine timing. But the most important thing is not what it's called, it's how it feels. And it feels like love, it feels like truth, and feels like home. And so in this first chapter, we won't ask you to believe in anything. We will only ask you to remember. remember a moment you felt guided. It could have been tiny, a gentle instinct, a message in a dream, a sudden clarity. Hold that moment in your heart now. Let it rise to the surface of your memory. That is the doorway. That moment, simple, quiet, powerful, is where our journey begins. Because the truth is not out there. It is here. And the one who can hear it is you. Sometimes the voice arrives in the quiet moments, right before sleep, right after heartbreak, or during those early morning hours when the world is still asleep, but something inside you is wide awake. You don't know why it comes. You don't control when it speaks, but when it does, you know. You don't think it's truth. You feel it. You're free. You might say, turn left here. Check on your sister. Don't go in there. Start over. Trust. And somehow, even when it makes no sense, you follow. And later, you see why. That's when you begin to wonder, where did that come from? Was it just instinct? Or was someone speaking to me? This voice, inner or outer, doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It doesn't panic. It just speaks, calm and clear, like still water reflecting the moon. And the strange thing is, it already knows. It knows what you need to do before you do. It knows when something feels right, even if it looks wrong. It knows when you're lying to yourself and loves you anyway. That's not the voice of fear. That's not the voice of the ego. That's not the critic in your head that's been shaped by years of survival. That's something else. Something older, wiser, something that doesn't need to explain itself, because truth doesn't need proof, it just is. When people describe this presence, they often say the same thing. It felt loving, it felt calm, it felt like it saw all of me. And when they followed it, their lives changed. They left relationships that were draining their soul. They quit jobs that never aligned with their purpose. They started new paths, took leaps of faith, moved across the world, healed from trauma, found peace. And always, it began with that voice, that feeling, that inner knowing. So let us ask again, is this voice something inside us? Or is it coming through us from somewhere beyond? Some believe in spirit guides, benevolent beings that watch over us, offering nudges, protection, insight. Others believe in the higher self, the eternal part of us that exists beyond time, beyond form, always connected to the all. And some believe both are true, that the guides we meet outside are reflections of what's within, that the voice of spirit and the voice of the soul are different notes from the same divine symphony. But before we go deeper into definitions and doctrines, let's stay in the experience, because this isn't about believing something, it's about remembering something you've already felt. There was a time you followed that voice, and it led you somewhere unexpected, but perfect. Or it warned you about something, and you were saved. Or it told you to wait, and what came next better than anything you could have planned. That's what we're pointing to. Not a theory, a truth you've lived, even if only for a moment. So breathe again. A truth you've lived, even if only for a moment. So breathe again. Right now, take breath deeper than usual. And listen, not to these words, but to the space between these words, because that's where it speaks. Not in noise, but in stillness. Not in the mind, but in the field behind the mind. It may feel like a feather brushing the edge of your thoughts, or like warmth in your chest, right in the center of your being. It may come with a picture in your mind's eye, or a phrase that repeats like a song lyric you can't forget. And sometimes it arrives through other people. A stranger's words, a child's question, a sentence in a book that feels like it was written just for you. That's guidance. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious, but it's always loving, even when it challenges you, especially when it challenges you. So who is the one guiding? We'll explore that. We'll walk through myths, religions, psychology, energy, consciousness. But for now, just rest in the fact that guidance is real. Because you felt it, you know it, and if you're watching this, it's probably calling again. Some say this calling is your soul's memory, a quiet remembrance of something deeper than this lifetime. Others call it destiny, the path written for you before you were even born. But whether it's a voice from within or a whisper from beyond, it has always been with you, even in your darkest moments. Especially then, when you lost direction, when the world grew heavy and silence louder the sound, when the people around you couldn't understand, and maybe neither could you. Still, there it was, like a spark under ash, waiting for the breath that would bring it back to flame. And maybe that's what this is. This moment, this listening, a kindling, not of answers, but of remembrance. Because deep down, you already know this voice. You've known it since you were a child, before language, before beliefs, before the world told you what was real and what was not. It's the voice that urged you to play, to imagine, to trust what you couldn't explain. It's the one that kept you company when no one else understood you, the one that stayed when everyone else left. And now, calling again, maybe not with words, but with sensation, a pull, a tug, a gentle reminder that you are not alone. You've never been one else. Some call this presence an angel, some a guide, other their higher self or inner wisdom. What matters more than the name is the relationship, the willingness to listen, to pause long enough to hear, and to follow, even when logic protests. Because this voice does not speak the language of logic. It speaks the language of alignment, of resonance. It moves through intuition, dreams, synchronicities, subtle nudges. It speaks through what you feel more than what you think. It lives in your body as much as in your mind. And as we walk through this journey together, you'll begin to notice when it speaks, in the flicker of emotion that rises without reason, in the chills on your skin when you hear something true, in the weight that lifts when you finally surrender to what you knew all along. We explore this voice from every angle. We'll ask big questions and listen for bigger answers. We'll journey through mysticism and neuroscience, culture and consciousness, psychology and spirituality, to understand not only what this voice is, but who is really speaking. Because whether you believe in spirit guides or not, whether you feel guided by an external force or an inner flame, the experience is real, and it is sacred. So take another breath, let the body soften, let the mind rest, and listen again. The whisper you hear in the background of your thoughts. Follow the path that opens when you trust what can't be seen. This is where our journey begins, not with answers, but with a question. Who is really guiding you? Is it a spirit guide walking beside you, unseen but always present? Is it your higher self speaking through intuition, memory, and knowing? Or are they one and the same, different voices echoing from the same sacred source? Let's find out together. From the beginning of time, humans have believed they were not walking alone, that something unseen yet deeply aware walked beside them, whispering truths in moments of silence, sending signs in the winds, the dreams, the symbols of everyday life. These presences have taken many names, but one title echoes across traditions, across cultures, across hearts: spirit guides. But what exactly are spirit guides? Are they spirits of ancestors? Are they light beings sent to help us grow? Are they fragments of divinity, or echoes of our own soul in a higher form? The answer is not always clear, and perhaps it's not meant to be, because spirit guides often appear in the form we most need at the time. They are mirrors of our trust and symbols of our becoming. Some say a spirit guide is a being that has moved beyond the human cycle of rebirth. They have lived many lives and now exist on a higher plane of wisdom. They have chosen to stay close to the earthly realm, not to intervene but to gently assist, not to dictate our choices, but to illuminate the crossroads when we feel lost. They might come in the form of ancestors, the bloodline that still lives in our bones, grandparents, great-grandparents, and elders whose stories we've never heard, but whose energy we still carry. When you feel the sudden urge to change paths, protect yourself, or honor a tradition, it may be the voice of lineage rising through you. Others speak of angelic guides, beings of light and compassion. They are not from Earth, and yet they seem to understand us deeply. These guides don't carry human memories, but instead hold pure intention. They are reminders of unconditional love, even in moments of fear or shame. Then there are the ascended masters. Souls like Buddha, Jesus, Kuan Yin, Saint Germain. Beings who walked the earth and attained higher consciousness. They are said to now serve as guides, not to be worshipped, but to awaken similar light within you. Their messages come not with commands, but with vibrations, with codes of truth carried through symbols, numbers, and presence. Some people are guided by animals, yes, spirit animals or animal totems. These are not just metaphors. They are real guides in non-human form. The owl who appears in dreams to bring clarity. The wolf who teaches loyalty in the path of the lone traveler. The hummingbird who arrives when joy is needed most. Animal guides are deeply rooted in shamanic and indigenous traditions, and for many they feel more intimate than anything with words. Spirit guides can also show up as formless energies. You may not see a face or hear a name, but you know they're there. Then show they're there, in the calm that falls over you after a long cry, in the exact phrase you needed to hear, spoken by a stranger on the bus, in the unexpected delay that saves your life. These guides are not here to fix our problems. They are not here to interfere with free will. Instead, they nudge gently. They rearrange small pieces behind the veil. They place breadcrumbs along your path and trust you to follow. Many people ask, why can't I see my guides? Or why don't they speak more clearly? But consider this, if guidance was undeniable, would free will still exist? Would you still be learning, or would you be obeying? Spirit guides are not here to make your life easy. They are here to make your soul grow. Growth comes from choosing, from wondering, from listening deeply when no answer is obvious. Sometimes a guide will have a name. You might receive it in a dream, or during meditation. You might hear it as a whisper or see it written repeatedly. Other times your guide won't give a name because names limit them. They are energy, presence, beyond identity. Some people only feel one guide with them their whole lives. Others speak of a team, different guides for different phases. One for protection, one for healing, one for learning. They arrive when needed and step back when the lesson is complete. You don't need to be a mystic or a psychic to feel them. You only need presence, openness, and most of all, permission. You must allow the unknown to reach you. You must stop trying to force the signs and begin honoring the ones already there. Often the first sign of a spirit guide's presence is subtle. A gut feeling you can't explain. A dream that feels more vivid than your waking life. Or a moment of déjà vu that feels like someone is gently nudging your memory. These are the whispers, not the shouts. The soft echoes that invite you to pay attention. For some, spirit guides communicate through nature, feathers on your path, repeat sightings of animals or numbers, sudden breezes during stillness, or the inexplicable warmth in your chest when you ask a question aloud. Nature becomes a language, and the universe your translator. Others find their guides speaking through music, a lyric that repeats over and over in your mind, a song that begins to play exactly when you need to hear it. These are not coincidences, they are conversations, just in a dialect you're still learning to recognize. In the spiritual community, it's often said that your guides must be invited to assist. They honor free will above all else. So they wait, patiently, for the moment you say, "Help me." It's not about weakness. It's about collaboration, about remembering you're not walking this path alone. You might call out to them in meditation, in prayer, or simply in a moment of stillness at your desk, your bed, your bathtub, and somehow in the quiet that follows you begin to feel a shift. The knowing that something heard you, that something is listening still. People often want confirmation. Was that really my guide? They ask. Or just my imagination? But consider this. What if your imagination is part of the mechanism through which spirit speaks? What if your mind, your creativity, your visions, are the canvas upon which your guides paint their presence? In fact, many artists, writers, musicians, and visionaries speak of being guided in their work. They don't always know where their ideas come from, only that they arrive whole and full of clarity. That is the signature of spirit guidance. Not always dramatic but deeply clear. Not commanding but unmistakably aligned. Spirit guides do not exist to bypass your human experience. They are not shortcuts. They are companions. They know the soul grows by learning, falling, healing, and rising. So they won't stop you from pain, but they may remind you of your strength in the middle of it. They may not prevent loss, but they may guide your heart toward peace afterward. They rarely speak in full sentences. They speak in nudges, in dreams you can't forget, in ideas that won't leave you alone, in people who enter your life at the exact right moment. Their language is synchronicity, the alignment of outer events with inner truth. But what if you've never felt guided? What if you've never sensed a presence? Does that mean you have no spirit guide? Not at all. It simply means the communication hasn't yet become conscious. Like waves on a distant shore, their messages are still reaching you. You may just not hear them over the noise of the world. The more you slow down, the more you listen inward, the louder those waves begin to sound, until eventually they're no longer distant. They become part of your rhythm, your breath, your way of being. Some people receive visions, others hear phrases in meditation. Some feel energy move through their body. There is no right way to experience a guide. The relationship is as unique as your fingerprint, and like all relationships, it deepens with time. At first, the connection may feel fleeting. You may doubt it, ignore it, even forget it. But the more you return, the more you trust, the stronger the thread becomes. Spirit guides are not a religion. They are not confined to belief systems or doctrines. They are part of the human soul's architecture, present whether you believe or not. But a belief acts like an open door, the sign on the threshold that says, "Enter here. I am ready to listen." You can ask for guidance on anything, large or small, from choosing a new path in life, to understanding why you feel stuck, to finding your lost keys. The key is to remain unattached to how the answer comes, because it may come in a form you didn't expect. And often that is how you'll know it was never just your mind. It was something wiser, watching, waiting, and finally, responding. The types of spirit guides are as varied as the souls they support, and each guide brings a particular flavor of energy, a certain wisdom, a distinct essence. Let's begin with one of the most familiar forms: ancestor spirits. Ancestor spirits are those who once walked the earth in physical form. Your bloodline, your lineage, even generations far beyond memory. They carry the stories of your people, the strengths and struggles encoded in your DNA. When they guide you, it may feel like ancient memory awakening, like bones remembering what the mind has forgotten. They are especially powerful during rites of passage. When you marry, give birth, lose someone, or begin again. In those liminal spaces, your ancestors gather, not to interfere but to witness, to support you as one of their own crossing the river of life. Then there are angelic guides, beings of high vibration, often experienced as light or radiant presence. They don't necessarily resemble the angels of religious iconography. They may not have wings or names you know, but their energy is unmistakable, deeply loving, infinitely patient, and often accompanied by a sense of peace that softens everything it touches. Angelic guides are often drawn to people who are sensitive empaths, healers, and those walking through pain. They specialize in protection, comfort, and reminders of your divine worth. They come when your heart forgets that it is whole, and they stay, just out of sight, holding space for your healing. Next are the Ascended Masters, beings who once lived human, lived sub, but achieved spiritual enlightenment across their incarnations. Think of Jesus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, Saint Germain, or even lesser-known sages from ancient civilizations. They guide with clarity, often appearing in dreams, meditations, or moments of sudden insight. Unlike angels, Ascended Masters often bring teachings. They guide you not only toward love, but toward wisdom. They invite you to grow, to stretch, to awaken, and they rarely coddle. Their love is the kind that holds a mirror up to your soul and asks, gently, are you living your truth? There are also animal guides, totems, familiars, and spirit animals. Sometimes they are actual animals from your life, pets, who have passed and continue to watch over you. Other times, they are symbolic, representing energies or instincts you are meant to embody. The hawk may arrive to sharpen your vision, the deer to remind you of gentleness, the wolf to reconnect you to your pack or your wildness. These beings often appear during transformation water, and air. These are ancient energies present in all spiritual traditions in one form or another. They may not speak in words, but in sensations. In the warmth of the sun when you feel alone. In the wind that rushes through you during a decision. In the rain that mirrors your tears. Sometimes your guide may not fit into any category. They may come as a being of light with no face. As a child, a monk, a warrior, or a stranger in your dreams who leaves you with a sentence you can't forget. That's the mystery. Spirit guides. They meet you where you are, and they appear in the forms your soul will most understand. No matter their type, all guides share a few things in common. They operate from love. They never control. They may challenge, but they will not frighten. They never control. They may challenge, but they will not frighten. They nudge, but they do not demand. And most importantly, they respect your freedom to choose. Because you are here to live, not just to be led. You are here to discover, stumble, and rise again. And your guides, they walk beside you, not in front of you, not behind you, not behind you, beside you, step for step, in sacred rhythm. In some moments, you'll feel them clearly. A thought that arrives with warmth, a decision that suddenly feels light, a dream that feels like a visit, a dream that feels like a visit. Other times, they'll step back, to let choose, to let you listen to your own inner compass. Because spirit guides are not replacements for your inner voice. They are reflections of the greater web, the tapestry of wisdom and love that surrounds and supports life. You are never alone, not in the truest sense. Whether you name them or not, whether you believe or not, they are there, waiting in the quiet spaces, in the stillness between thoughts, in the pause before yes or no, in the breath that reminds you, you are guided, you are held, you are loved. And as you walk this path of awakening, you may just find that your spirit guides were never strangers, but fragments of the same divine intelligence that lives within you, and that in listening to them, you are also remembering yourself. There is a voice within you that speaks in silence. It does not shout, it does not beg for your attention, but when you hear it, truly hear it, it moves through your whole being like a sacred truth. Remembered, this voice has been called many names. Your higher self, your soul's whisper, your inner compass, it has also been mistaken for many other things. Fear, wearing a familiar mask, cultural conditioning that sounds like duty, old trauma echoing as caution. So how do you know which voice you're hearing? Which whisper comes from your truth, and which from your wounds? This is the sacred art of discernment, and it begins not with answers, but with deep, spacious listening. The true inner voice doesn't speak from anxiety. It's not frantic. It doesn't shout deadlines or scream about failure. It comes more like a knowing, a gentle yet unmistakable pull in a certain direction. Sometimes it feels like peace, other times like quiet courage, but it is never cruel. It does not belittle you, even when it asks you to change. It doesn't use guilt or shame to motivate you. Instead, it brings clarity, like fog lifting on a path you forgot was always there. And yet, many people confuse voice with the layers of programming they've inherited. We are conditioned from a young age, taught what to value, what to fear, what to strive for. This conditioning can get so deep that it starts to mimic intuition. You think it's your soul speaking, but it's your past, your caretaker's beliefs, society's blueprint for success. The inner voice of the higher self often feels unfamiliar at first, because it comes from a place deeper than the mind. It doesn't follow logic or timelines. It's not concerned with status or approval. It only asks one thing: what feels aligned with your soul's essence? Sometimes it will tell you to stay when you want to run. Other times it will say go when everything seems fine on the outside. It cares little for comfort zones, and much for authenticity. This is why it's often inconvenient, but never unkind. To hear this voice clearly, we must slow down. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. We must step back from the noise, from the opinions of others, from the pressure to perform or prove. and sit quietly in the stillness of our being. In that stillness, you begin to notice the difference. The voice of fear is loud, urgent, and familiar. It's trying to protect you even if it's using outdated maps. The voice of the higher self is quiet, timeless, and compassionate. It trusts that you are safe to evolve. It trusts that you can hold both risk and truth. That you can be uncomfortable and still guided. That you can be uncomfortable and still guided. The challenge is that both voices can sound like tea. They live inside the same head after all. So how do you tell them apart? You begin to track their energy. What happens in your body when you follow one voice versus the other? Do you feel expanded or contracted? Free or imprisoned? You ask, is this coming from love or fear? Free or imprisoned? You ask, is this coming from love or fear? From truth or from the need to be accepted? You learn to pause before reacting, to sit with decisions instead of rushing toward relief. This is why meditation, breathwork, and stillness practices are not luxuries. They are essential tools of discernment. They bring the sediment of mental noise to the bottom, so the water becomes clear. And when the water is clear, you can hear your soul again. You also begin to notice patterns. Fear always speaks in absolutes. You must, you should. If you don't, you'll regret it. The inner voice of truth gives space. It's, here is another way. It doesn't punish, it invites. It doesn't command, it calls. Still, we must be gentle with ourselves in this process. Because we are layered beings, our inner voice is shaped by both soul and shadow, and healing means learning to tell them apart without shame. Sometimes the inner voice comes as a sudden insight, a flash of clarity in the middle of a storm. You weren't even asking, yet the answer arrived, and something in you knew it was right. That of knowing doesn't need justification. It doesn't need a pros and cons list. It settles into your bones, like it had always been there, just waiting to be seen. This is why people say the truth resonates, because real guidance has a vibration to it. It harmonizes with your deeper self, not your anxious self, not your performing self, but the self beneath all roles. And this vibration isn't just poetic, it's biological. Your body is a tuning fork. It senses when something is aligned or off. Your breath slows when you feel safe. Your chest tightens when something feels wrong. Your intuition lives in the body, and your inner voice rides on that frequency. But fear lives there too. Old experiences, emotional memories, survival patterns, they can all echo through your nervous system, which is why tuning into your inner voice requires more than just listening. It requires healing. You begin to ask, is this a trauma response or a soul signal? Am I hearing truth or replaying an old pattern? And you don't judge the answer, you just observe. The more you observe, the more distinct the voices become. The voice of conditioning is often afraid of change. It says, stay safe. Don't make a mistake, you're not ready. The voice of your soul doesn't deny the fear, it just doesn't serve it. It says, you are ready, even if you don't feel it yet. It says, leap and trust the wings will grow on the way down. And this can be terrifying, because we've been trained to only move when we're certain, when we have proof, data, and mission. But the inner voice doesn't work like that. It doesn't promise comfort, it offers alignment. It's less about the outcome and more about the integrity of the path. Are you walking toward wholeness or away from it? Are you betraying yourself to keep the peace, or stepping into your full truth? This is the compass your inner voice uses. Not reward or punishment, but resonance. Some people think they've lost their inner voice, that it's gone silent, that it's not silent, it's just buried. Buried under obligations, under shame, under the need to please or prove. To hear it again, you don't have to become someone new. You just have to become still enough to meet the you that never left. That means creating space, even just a few quiet minutes a day, turning off the external noise and listening inward. Journaling is sacred way in, letting the pen move without censorship, writing from a place beyond logic. Sometimes your soul speaks more clearly when your mind gets out of the way. Dreams are another doorway. Your conscious mind sleeps, and your deeper knowing steps forward. What symbols keep repeating? What emotions linger when you wake? Your inner voice also speaks through synchronicities. through the repeated patterns, the signs, the moments that feel too perfectly timed to be chance. This isn't fantasy. It's the soul's way of communicating through a language older than words. But the most powerful way to connect with your inner voice is trust. Every time you listen to it, even in small ways, you strengthen the signal. You say to the universe, "I'm willing to walk in alignment, even when I don't see the whole path." And the universe answers back, "Here's the next step." It may not always be clear. It may not always make sense to others. But when it's your truth, your true inner voice, it will feel right. Like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Like a breath you didn't know you were holding finally released. And even if the outcome doesn't look the way you expected, there will be peace. Because you honored your own soul, and that is never wasted. There's a quiet revolution that begins when you start trusting your inner voice. You stop outsourcing your truth. You stop waiting for someone else to confirm what you already know. You begin living from the inside out. This shift is subtle, but seismic, because when you're no longer ruled by conditioning, you become unshakable. Not in a loud or arrogant way, but in a grounded, soulful way. Like an oak tree that bends with the wind, but never forgets its roots. Your decisions carry a different energy. Not rushed, not reactive, but clear, deliberate, rooted in what feels true, not just what looks good. And others begin to feel that shift too. They sense the presence in you, the inner clarity. They may not be able to explain it, but they trust it, because energy never lies. But this doesn't mean the path is always easy. Sometimes the voice inside will guide you away from comfort, away from approval, and might ask you to say no when everyone expects a yes, and might ask to walk alone for a while. But what you gain in return is sovereignty, the ability to stand with yourself, even in silence, especially in silence, but in that silence where the voice becomes loudest. Not the frantic voice of fear, but the calm voice of truth, that doesn't scream, it invites, that doesn't push, it opens, it doesn't scream, it invites, that doesn't push, it opens. You start to recognize its signature, that never speaks in absolutes, it never shames or rushes, it simply reveals, that it points, and it trusts you to choose. This is where you meet the higher self, not as an idea, but as an experience, not as something separate, but as who you've always been. Because the true inner voice is not a stranger. It's the part of you never forgot, never fragmented. It's been watching all along, patiently waiting for your return. And when you return, even just for a moment, something shifts. The layer of illusion falls away. The mask is set down, and you feel free to live by your own rhythm, free to define success by how well your soul breathes, free to walk paths that make no sense to others, but make perfect sense to your heart. This is the gift of discernment, not just the ability to choose between right and wrong, but between real and conditioned, between truth and fear, between your voice and the voices that were planted there. You no longer move from should, you move from soul. You no longer seek external confirmation, because internal clarity is enough. But this is not a one-time awakening. It's a practice, a devotion. Every day the world will try to drown out the whisper, and every day you'll choose to listen again, even when it's hard, even when it leads you into uncertainty, even when it requires letting go of what you thought you needed, because you begin to trust deeply that your inner voice is not leading you away from life. It's leading you into it, into the fullness of who you are, into the life that was waiting all along behind the noise. And so you walk, not because you know every step, but because you know you're not walking alone. You are walking with yourself, with your truth, with the sacred flame that can never be extinguished. And that flame, voice, will light the way home. Across the world, the concept of spirit guides appears in many forms and is deeply embedded in the spiritual practices of numerous cultures. In each of these traditions, spirit guides are seen as a source of wisdom, protection, and insight, and they serve as intermediaries between the human and the divine. Whether these guides are believed to be ancestors, angels, animal spirits, or deities, Their role is universally understood as one of guidance, offering us clarity and direction when we need it most. In Chinese philosophy, spirit guides are often connected to the flow of qi, the vital energy that circulates through all living beings. According to Taoism, qi is the animating force behind the universe. Spirit guides in Taoist thought are not external beings in the traditional sense, but are instead felt as part of the very energy that flows through nature, guiding individuals in subtle and powerful ways. They are believed to assist in the cultivation of balance and harmony with the Tao, which is the natural order of things. Rather than demanding control, Taoism teaches that true wisdom comes from wu wei, or effortless action, flowing with the current of life instead of against it. Here, the spirit guides serve as reminders to follow the rhythm of life and to trust in the flow of the universe. The yin and yang philosophy, another cornerstone of Chinese belief, teaches that balance is essential for spiritual harmony. Just as yin and yang are two complementary forces that rely on each other for balance, spirit guides are thought to provide the necessary guidance for this equilibrium. They help individuals navigate the ups and downs of life, ensuring that one's actions are in line with the natural order. In Chinese tradition, the connection to spirit guides is not often dramatic or mystical, but rather a quiet, intuitive understanding that arises from being in tune with the world around us. It is through mindfulness and awareness that we come to hear their subtle whispers. In Japan, the belief in spirits is an integral part of life, with kami being the central spiritual entities that guide and protect people. Kami are believed to inhabit all things, from the smallest pebble to the grandest mountain. They are not distant, ethereal beings but are felt in the natural world and woven into the fabric of daily existence. Shinto, the indigenous religion of Japan, emphasizes the presence of these spirits, teaching that everything in nature contains a spiritual essence. The belief is that when we approach nature with respect and reverence, we can connect with these spirits and receive their guidance. In this way, the very earth becomes a medium through which spirit guides communicate. When a person feels lost or uncertain, turning to nature, a quiet forest, a flowing river, or a towering tree, can often provide a sense of direction and clarity. Shinto rituals often involve offerings to the kami, prayers, and ceremonies that seek to honor these spirits and invite their wisdom into one's life. The Japanese understanding of spirit guidance is deeply integrated into the everyday experience of the world, rather than being something separate or distant. By embracing the sacredness of nature, individuals can receive guidance from the kami that leads them toward peace, balance, and harmony. In the Shinto worldview, there is no separation between the spiritual and the material worlds. They are intertwined, and spirit guides are felt in the spaces between, in the wind, the rain, the moonlight. In Egyptian thought, spirit guides are often represented by deities, ancestors, and other divine beings who watch over and guide the people. The Egyptians believed that the cow, or the life force, continues after death and can become a spiritual guide for the living. These spirits are seen as powerful forces that help individuals on their path towards spiritual enlightenment, often providing advice through dreams, visions, and rituals. The Egyptian gods such as Thoth, the god of wisdom, and Anubis, the god of the afterlife, were often invoked to offer guidance and protection. The practice of Ma'at, or cosmic order, was central to Egyptian spirituality, and spirit guides were believed to assist in maintaining this order, ensuring that people lived in harmony with divine principles. Ancient Egyptians often looked to their ancestors and gods for guidance, believing that the divine had a direct hand in shaping their lives and destinies. The role of ancestors as spirit guides is also significant in African traditions. In many African cultures, ancestors are seen as protectors and guides, watching over their descendants and offering wisdom from the spiritual realm. These ancestors are often called upon in rituals and ceremonies, where their spirits are invoked to offer blessings, guidance, and protection. In some traditions, the ancestors are believed to communicate through dreams, divination, or through signs in the natural world. They are seen as guardians who help guide individuals on their path, ensuring that they stay connected to their roots and traditions. Across all of these traditions, whether through the whispers of the Tao, the guidance of the kami, or the protection of ancestral spirits, the role of spirit guides remains the same. They offer insight, wisdom, and direction, but in ways that are deeply embedded in the cultural context from which they arise. By listening to these guides, we can find our way through life's challenge, align with our higher purpose, and connect to something greater than ourselves. In many cases, spirit guides serve as reminders that we are not alone and that the divine presence is always with us, guiding us toward our true path. The diversity of spirit guides across cultures highlights a universal truth that the spiritual realm is vast and that guidance comes in many forms. Each tradition offers a unique lens through which to view these helpers, but they all share the belief that there is a deeper connection between us and the unseen forces that shape our world. In Hinduism, the concept of spirit guides is deeply intertwined with the belief in the Atman, the true self or soul that is eternal and divine. Hindu philosophy teaches that we are all part of the greater divine consciousness, known as Brahman. While we experience ourselves as separate beings in the material world, our true essence is one with the universe. Spirit guides in Hinduism often come in the form of devas, gods and goddesses, rishis, sages, or even karmic ancestors, who offer wisdom and insight to help individuals realize their divine nature. These guides are often seen as embodiments of higher consciousness, helping individuals overcome ignorance and connect with their spiritual truth. The most famous of these spirit guides is Krishna, the divine figure who guides Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. In this sacred text, Krishna offers Arjuna guidance during a moment of crisis, helping him understand the importance of duty, righteousness, and the nature of the self. Krishna represents the Atman, the divine spark that resides in all beings, and through his teachings, Arjuna is reminded of his true nature. In Hinduism, spirit guides are often seen as direct representations of divine qualities, helping individuals overcome obstacles and follow their dharma or purpose in life. By connecting with these divine guides, practitioners are reminded of the path to liberation, or moksha, which leads to union with the divine. The Jungian psychological perspective offers another lens through which we can view spirit guides. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, believed that the unconscious mind is populated with archetypes, universal symbols that represent fundamental human experiences. These archetypes appear in myths, stories, and dreams, and they often serve as guides to help us navigate life's challenges. In this sense, spirit guides can be seen as representations of these archetypes, figures that emerge from our unconscious minds to offer us insight and direction. For example, a person might experience a dream in which they are guided by a wise old man or a maternal figure, archetypes that represent the sage or great mother. These figures may appear to us in moments of crisis, offering us guidance and wisdom from a place beyond the ego. In Jungian terms, these spirit guides are not external beings, but reflections of our own inner psyche. They serve to connect us with the deeper, more intuitive aspects of ourselves that are often hidden by the conscious mind. Through engaging with these archetypes and spirit guides, we can gain greater self-awareness and move toward wholeness, integrating the unconscious and conscious parts of the self. In shamanic traditions, spirit guides play an even more prominent role in the spiritual journey. Shamans are believed to enter altered states of consciousness through rituals, drumming, or meditation in order to communicate directly with the spirit world. These rituals allow shamans to journey into the spiritual realms to receive guidance from their personal spirit guides, who are often animal spirits or ancestor spirits. The spirit guides in shamanism are seen as protectors and helpers, assisting the shaman in healing, divination, and spiritual work. For example, a shaman may be guided by an eagle, wolf, or bear, each of which represents different qualities or teachings. The eagle, for instance, might offer wisdom and higher perspective, while the wolf could represent loyalty, courage, and instinct. Through their relationship with these spirit guides, shamans gain knowledge that is used not only for personal healing but for the well-being of their communities. One of the core beliefs in shamanism is that spirit guides help maintain the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. They offer guide to those who seek it, helping individuals understand their life path and their connection to the universe. In this way, spirit guides in shamanism are not just passive advisors but active participants in the process of healing and transformation. In many African traditions, spirit guides are often represented by ancestors who are believed to continue watching over their descendants even after death. Ancestors are highly revered in African cultures, and their guidance is sought through rituals, prayers, and divination practices. These ancestors are seen as protectors, offering wisdom and advice to their living relatives. Through rituals such as ancestor worship and offerings, individuals honor their ancestors and invite their presence to guide them in times of need. The connection to ancestors is not seen as a one-time event but an ongoing relationship where the living can receive constant guidance from those who came before them. In many African cultures, the belief is that ancestors are constantly present, communicating through dreams, signs, and the natural world. In these traditions, spirit guides are not distant or abstract forces, but are present in the very fabric of life. They are part of an ongoing spiritual relationship that connects the living to their past, their culture, and the divine. Whether through animal spirit, ancestral wisdom, or the teachings of ancient deities, the guidance provided by these spirits is essential to the well-being and spiritual growth of the individual. They offer not only protection but also a path towards self-discovery and the fulfillment of one's spiritual potential. In all of these diverse cultures, the role of spirit guides is clear. They serve as intermediaries between the seen and unseen worlds, offering guidance, protection, and wisdom when needed. They help individuals navigate the complexities of life, ensuring that the person remains aligned with their higher self and with the greater flow of the universe. No matter the cultural lens, spirit guides are a universal force, one that helps each of us on our journey toward enlightenment, balance, and understanding. The human brain is a remarkable organ, capable of processing vast amounts of information at lightning speed. Yet, when it comes to the phenomena of inner knowing, intuition, and gut feelings, we often find ourselves questioning the source of these insights. Where do these subtle whispers of guidance come from? And how can they feel so deeply aligned with our truth? The answer, as it turns out, might lie in the deep, intricate workings of our body's neural networks and the subtle connection between mind and body. Recent research into neuroscience has revealed that we may possess more ways of knowing than we ever realized. One of the key areas of focus in the research is the gut-brain connection, the intimate relationship between the brain and the gut. The gut, often referred to as the second brain, contains over 100 million neurons, more than the spinal cord. These neurons are responsible for processing information and communicating with the brain, influencing not just digestion but also our emotions and intuitions. In fact, the gut has its own nervous system, known as the enteric nervous system, which is capable of acting independently of the brain, although it still communicates with it through the vagus nerve. This connection between the gut and the brain explains why we often experience a gut feeling, that intuitive nudge that tells us when something feels right or wrong, even when we don't have all the facts. These feelings of knowing, which arise in the gut, are rooted in the processing of information by the enteric nervous system, which is constantly gathering data from the body's systems and making calculations on our behalf. The brain is also deeply involved in this process of inner knowing. In particular, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making, planning, and reasoning, plays a crucial role in the integration of conscious awareness and subconscious intuition. Research has shown that the prefrontal cortex processes information in a way that blends both logical analysis and emotional insight. Integration allows us to make quick, yet accurate judgments, even when we don't have all the data we might traditionally need for a decision. This may explain why sometimes we just know what to do in a situation, even without fully understanding how we arrived at that conclusion. In fact, the brain is constantly processing both conscious and unconscious data, creating a feedback loop that helps inform our decisions and actions. But there is more to the process of inner knowing than just the brain and gut working together. The heart, too, plays an essential role in this complex system of internal communication. The heart-brain connection has been studied extensively by researchers who have found that the heart is more than just a pump for blood. It also sends and receives a wealth of information from the brain. The heart is capable of generating a complex electromagnetic field that can be detected several feet away from the body, which means it's sending out signals to the environment and potentially influencing the energies around us. These signals from the heart have been found to influence brain activity, suggesting that our heart's intelligence can guide us in ways we might not fully understand. One of the most intriguing aspects of the heart's role in inner knowing is its ability to detect subtle shifts in the body's state of being. For example, when we feel fear, joy, or love, our heart rate and rhythm change, which in turn affects the signals that the heart sends to the brain. This alignment between the heart and brain allows for a deeper connection to our emotional and intuitive state, offering guidance that transcends logical reasoning. In a sense, the heart acts as a barometer for our emotional and spiritual well-being, alerting us when we are in alignment with our true self, or when something feels off. By tuning into these subtle shifts in the heart's rhythms, we can access deeper layers of inner knowing and intuition that help guide us in our decision-making and daily lives. The neuroscience of intuition also reveals the role of mirror neurons in our ability to connect with the experiences of others and read subtle cues from the environment. Mirror neurons are specialized brain cells that allow us to experience emotions, sensations, and actions as if we were actually experiencing them ourselves. These neurons play a central role in empathy and emotional resonance, enabling us to sense the feelings of others and react accordingly. When we interact with others, our mirror neurons help us process their emotions and intentions, allowing us to tune into their inner world and respond with empathy or understanding. In a way, these neurons also allow us to connect with the collective consciousness, the shared energy of humanity, and pick up on intuitive insights that arise from this collective space. By becoming more aware of how these mirror neurons work, we can cultivate a deeper sensitivity to the subtle signals and energy exchanges that happen all around us. In addition to these neurological mechanisms, the field of quantum physics offers another perspective on the nature of intuition and inner knowing. Quantum theory suggests that everything in the universe, including our thoughts and feelings, is interconnected at a fundamental level. This interconnectedness allows for a type of non-local communication, where information can be shared instantaneously across time and space, even without direct physical contact. In this way, inner knowing may be seen as a form of quantum connection, where our consciousness taps into a universal field of information that is beyond the confines of linear time and space. Just as quantum entanglement allows particles to affect each other regardless of distance, our thoughts and feelings may be able to influence and receive guidance from the larger web of consciousness that unites all beings. This framework opens up the possibility that intuition is not just a biological or psychological phenomenon, but a deep cosmic process that connects us to the source of all wisdom and insight. This brings us to the concept of coherence, a state where the heart, brain, and nervous system are in harmonious alignment. When we are in a state of coherence, our thoughts, emotions, and bodily functions synchronize, creating a calm, focused awareness that allows inner knowing to rise naturally to the surface. Practices such as heart-focused breathing, gratitude, and meditation can help foster this state of coherence, making it easier for us to tune in to the deeper messages from within. In this balanced state, we're no longer clouded by mental noise, emotional overwhelm, or stress-induced disconnection. We become still enough to hear the quiet inner whisper, the intuition that often knows before the mind can explain. This coherence can also be measured scientifically. Organizations like the Heart Math Institute have been pioneers in this field, studying how emotional states affect heart rhythm patterns and how these patterns in turn influence brain function and perception. Their research shows that positive emotional states such as appreciation and compassion create smooth, ordered heart rhythms, which then support more effective cognitive functioning and deeper intuitive clarity. In contrast, negative states like frustration or anxiety produce chaotic heart rhythms, which interfere with our ability to think clearly and access intuitive insight. This suggests that our ability to receive inner guidance is not just about accessing it, it's also about the state we're in when we listen. When the body is in a state of harmony, inner knowing becomes easier to access and trust. Another layer of neuroscience involved in intuition is the default mode network, DMN, of the brain. This network activates when we're not focused on the outside world, like during daydreaming, meditation, or quiet reflection. It's in these states of mental rest that the brain often connects unrelated ideas, memories, and feelings in surprising ways. These connections can produce sudden insights or aha moments that feel like knowing, like when the answer to a problem pops into your head out of nowhere. What's interesting is that the DMN tends to be more active when we're in a relaxed, open state, not when we're forcing a solution or overthinking. This again shows how intuition arises not from but from receptivity. It flows in when we're still enough to receive it. It's worth noting that the brain doesn't work in isolation from the body. In fact, much of what we call intuition is embodied. It lives in the sensations, tensions, and energies of the physical body. This idea is supported by somatic psychology, which emphasizes the intelligence of the body in guiding awareness and healing. We often feel intuitive signals as sensations: a tightening in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, a sudden feeling of lightness or heaviness. These sensations are like messages from the body's wisdom, bypassing the intellect and speaking directly through experience. This is why body-based practices such as yoga, qigong, or even simple breathwork can enhance intuitive awareness. They help clear the noise from the nervous system and bring us into deeper resonance with ourselves. As we tune into the body, we begin to distinguish between the tension of fear and the clarity of truth. We learn how intuition feels physically, and that it often comes with a sense of expansion, presence, and grounded calm. What's fascinating is that inner knowing, while deeply personal, seems to follow universal patterns. People across cultures describe intuitive insight in similar ways, as sudden, quiet, certain, and often accompanied by a felt sense of peace or rightness. It doesn't argue, doesn't shout, it simply is. This consistency across human experience suggests that inner knowing may arise from something more than just random thoughts or neural firings. It may be a fundamental aspect of consciousness itself. Neuroscience, for all its progress, still cannot fully explain the mystery of how we just know certain things. Yes, we can track electrical signals, study neural pathways, and observe how certain states foster insight. But the origin of intuition, the spark that guides us beyond logic, remains elusive. Is it the soul speaking through the body? Is it a subconscious synthesis of everything we've seen, felt, and known? Or is it the brain receiving frequencies from a greater field, a quantum network of wisdom we're only just beginning to understand? Some scientists, like Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, have proposed theories like morphic resonance, the idea that patterns of thought and behavior can be transmitted across space and time through invisible fields. Others, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, speak of the ability to tune the brain to higher states of consciousness, accessing information from beyond ordinary awareness. These theories are still considered fringe by mainstream science, but they point to a growing recognition that consciousness may not be confined to the skull. It may be non-local, interconnected, and responsive, capable of reaching across space, time, and the veil of form to retrieve insight and guidance. What's certain is this: our brains, hearts, and bodies are exquisitely designed for sensing, receiving, and interpreting signals from within and beyond. When we slow down enough to listen, when we become attuned to the wisdom encoded in our biology, we realize that inner knowing is not rare or mystical. It's natural. It's a part of who we are. The key is learning to trust it. And that trust begins with presence, awareness, and a willingness to surrender the noise of the world for the stillness of our own being. The idea of receiving messages from beyond the physical world has captivated human imagination for centuries. Whether it's a prophet on a mountaintop, a shaman in a trance, or a modern-day intuitive receiving insights through automatic writing, the theme is the same. Messages are coming in from somewhere unseen, from someone unseen. But who is speaking? And how do we truly know where these messages come from? Let's begin with the practice of mediumship. A medium is someone who acts as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms, communicating with spirits, often deceased loved ones, guides, or other entities. This communication can come through visions, sounds, impressions, or even full conversations. Some mediums see vivid images in their mind's eye. Others hear voices or feel emotional waves that are not their own. There are physical mediums who allow spirits to speak through them using their voice or gestures, and mental mediums who receive messages internally, like telepathic impressions. While this might sound fantastical, the experience of being a medium often doesn't feel dramatic to the person involved. Many describe it as a soft presence, a sudden knowing, or a stream of thoughts that don't quite feel like their own. And yet, these messages often carry wisdom, comfort, or uncanny relevance, as though touching something deeper than ordinary cognition. Next, we have channeling, a broader category that includes receiving guidance from beings, energies, or higher selves through an altered state of consciousness. The person becomes a vessel, or conduit, for something else to speak through them. Channelers often enter trance-like states, allowing words to flow through them without interference from the conscious mind. Some speak aloud, aloud, while others write, sometimes pages and pages, without consciously choosing the words. This is what's known as automatic writing, a form of channeling where the hand seems to move on its own, revealing messages from a source that feels external or higher. Writers often report that they had no idea what they were about to say, and yet the final message feels deeply aligned, poetic, or spiritually resonant. There's a quality to this writing that seems to bypass ordinary grammar or logic, delivering something that touches the heart rather than the mind. Some channelers work with specific spirit guides, naming them and developing a relationship over time. Others simply open themselves to Source, the universe, or their higher self, and allow the wisdom to flow. In either case, the unifying thread is that the information comes through not from the individual. They are not generating it from thought. They are receiving it like a radio tuning into a signal. One of the most intriguing forms of this phenomenon is the divine download, a sudden complete transmission of insight, knowledge, or guidance that arrives all at once. There are no words at first, just an instant knowing, a complete understanding, almost like a data packet from another realm. Later in it may take hours or days to translate that energy into human language. But in that first moment, it is full and whole. People describe these downloads as spiritual epiphanies, moments of truth that shift their entire perspective in seconds. What's common across all of these modalities is the sense that something else is doing the speaking. The person receiving the message often feels surprised, moved, or awed by what comes through. They may cry, feel tingles or warmth, or fall into silence afterward. There is often a reverent, sacred quality to the moment. It feels like something holy has passed through, and the person is left changed by it. Skeptics may ask, is this real communication, or simply the subconscious mind expressing itself in poetic form? Is it the imagination dressing itself up as the divine? These are valid questions, and they echo the deeper inquiry of this entire video. Where is the line between spirit and self? Are we receiving guidance from another realm, or simply listening to a part of ourselves we don't yet understand? Perhaps the answer is both. For many people, the truth of the message is not found in how it arrived, but in what it says and how it makes them feel. Does the message resonate? Does it bring peace, clarity, or healing? Does it align with their soul, even if it bypasses logic? If so, it often doesn't matter whether the guidance came from a guide, a god, or the quiet depths of their own being. What matters is that it came, and that it brought them closer to truth. We can think of these practices as different portals to the same realm of wisdom. Whether we're receiving a download during meditation, transcribing automatic writing, or hearing a guide's voice in the dark, we are tapping into something larger than the small self. And this larger may not be separate from us at all. It may be a dimension of our own consciousness, one that knows and remembers more than our everyday awareness does. In this way, mediums, channelers, and mystics may not be accessing foreign spirits, but instead deeper layers of collective or personal consciousness. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a shared well of archetypes, memories, and symbols that transcends the individual ego. When someone channels a wise old man, or a goddess, are they speaking with a literal spirit, or an archetype encoded in the structure of consciousness itself? When a person receives a divine message in their own handwriting, is that the soul expressing itself, or the self, emerging from silence? Regardless of the origin, these experiences are powerful and real to those who have them. They can bring healing, insight, and life-changing transformation. They can answer questions that logic never could, and they often come when we least expect it, during a walk in nature, a quiet journaling session, or a moment of grief and surrender. The message arrives, soft, clear, and undeniable. There is a quiet reverence that surrounds the moment of receiving spiritual communication. It does not always come with fireworks or dramatic pronouncements. Sometimes it whispers in the most ordinary moments. Folding laundry, driving in silence, standing beneath a tree as the wind brushes your face. And in those moments, something slips through, like a beam of light finding its way through a crack in the wall. Some people report that their guides speak in a familiar voice, as if they've known them for lifetimes. Others feel the presence in symbols, a repeated number, a feather on the ground, the sudden scent of roses with no flower in sight. Guidance doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in energy, a softening of the heart, a lifting of fear, a moment of peace so deep it hushes all doubt. And yet, even in its subtlety, the experience experience often feels undeniable, as though the veil has parted, just for a breath, revealing something eternal, a truth that was always there, just waiting to be remembered. In recent years, spiritual communication has entered mainstream spaces in new ways. Social media platforms are filled with intuitive readers, channelers, and energy healers offering guidance to a global audience. They speak of galactic beings, star families, ancestral wisdom, and transmissions from higher dimensions. Whether one believes these messages literally or sees them as metaphors for inner wisdom, their effect is real. People feel seen. People feel loved. People feel connected to something greater than the noise of the world. This brings us to a deeper question. Why are so many people drawn to this kind of communication now? What is it that calls us to look beyond the physical and listen to the spaces between things? Perhaps we are in a time when collective consciousness is waking up, when the soul of humanity is remembering what it forgot, what we are not alone, but we are never alone. That we are never alone. These messages, whether from guides, higher selves, or intuitive insight, often carry a similar frequency. They speak of love, of compassion, of healing, unity, and soul purpose. They remind us that we are more than the roles we play, or the thoughts we think, that we are beings of energy, of light, of consciousness itself. When someone sits down to channel, they often begin with a ritual, lighting a candle, setting an intention, calling in protection or guidance. This isn't superstition, it's a way of tuning the mind, like adjusting the dial on a radio, to enter a space of openness, clarity, and alignment, because not all voices are the same, and discernment is key. Just because a message is channeled does not make it wise or loving. The spiritual realm, like the mental realm, contains many frequencies, some helpful, some misleading, and this is why grounding, intention, and heart-centeredness are so important in these practices. It's not about giving up control, it's about opening in trust, while remaining anchored in your own inner knowing. The most powerful channels are not passive vessels. They are discerning, present, and clear in their own vibration. They do not hand over their sovereignty. They collaborate with spirit, not surrender to it blindly. Many who walk this path develop deep emotional intelligence. They begin to sense the difference between fear and intuition, between ego, desire, and soul truth. And this sensitivity becomes their compass. They no longer need proof or permission. They recognize guidance not by its volume, but by its vibration. It reminds you of who you are, and leaves you more whole than it found you. The more one opens to these moments, the more they come. Not always in the way we expect, but always with purpose. Sometimes a message comes through a song lyric you needed to hear, sometimes through a stranger's kind words, or through an image in a dream that stays with you for weeks. Spirit speaks many tongues, and when we quiet the noise of the mind, we begin to hear them. So whether you are drawn to channeling, mediumship, or simply journaling your intuition, know that this path is open to all. You don't need special abilities, only willingness. You don't need to prove your worthiness, only to listen with your heart. Because in truth you are already connected. You've always been connected, and the voice that reaches out from beyond may just be reaching from within. The ego does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers too, but its whisper is laced with fear, with urgency, with a deep need to control, and tells you that something terrible will happen if you don't act now, that you'll lose your chance, that you're not good enough unless you prove it right this moment. This is the voice of the conditioned mind, built from years of survival, programming, and protection. It's not evil, it's just scared. The inner knowing, by contrast, is calm, steady. It doesn't demand or panic. It waits, patient as a mountain. It speaks through resonance, not reaction. And when you hear it, it feels like a remembering, like something you already knew but had forgotten. Discerning between these two voices is one of the most important spiritual practices there is. Because so often, the ego disguises itself as intuition. It learns the language of spirituality and starts to speak in terms of alignment or guidance, when it's really trying to keep you safe from change. The ego will say, "Don't do that, it's not aligned." But the truth is, it's just afraid of risk. The inner voice may say the same thing, but with a different energy, one rooted in clarity, not avoidance. So how do you tell them apart? You listen for tone. Ego is tight, sharp, rushed. Inner knowing is spacious, soft, and timeless. Ego plays out arguments in your head. Inner knowing speaks once and doesn't need to repeat itself. You listen for what the voice is protecting. If it's guarding your comfort zone, it's probably ego. If it's nudging you toward expansion, even if it scares you, it's likely your soul. This is not about demonizing the ego. The ego has a role. It helps you navigate this world, make plans, establish boundaries. But it is not meant to be the driver. It's meant to be the passenger. When it drives, it chooses safety over truth, control over freedom, familiarity over growth. The inner voice, the soul voice, does not seek to destroy the ego. It seeks to bring it into harmony, to show it that it is safe to let go. This life is not against you, that the unknown can be trusted. One powerful practice is to write both voices down. Ask a question and let your ego speak first. Let it rant, worry, defend, and explain. Then, breathe. Drop into your heart, and let your inner knowing answer too. You'll feel the difference immediately. The ego's answer will often be long and complicated, filled with shoulds, what-ifs, and conditions. The inner voice's answer will be brief. It may only be a sentence or a word, but it will land in your body, like a truth bell. Another reason is through silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the silence beneath thought. When you sit long enough, the mind starts to quiet, and underneath the static a signal appears. Don't open your heart, you'll get hurt again. The inner voice may say, this person is not for you, but with love, not fear. Or it may say, open your heart anyway, even if it hurt will free you. In career decisions, the ego will weigh status, security, and appearance. The inner voice will guide you toward what feels aligned, even if it doesn't make sense yet, even if it requires risk. And sometimes the two voices align. That's when the ego has been integrated, when it trusts the soul enough to follow its lead. This is a beautiful moment, not an absence of ego, but a friendship with it. This is great peace in knowing who to listen to, and that peace does not come from answers but from trust. Trust in your capacity to feel truth, not just think about it, because the soul doesn't speak logic. It speaks in knowing, in deep, quiet certainty. And when you follow that voice, life begins to open in ways the ego could never have predicted. Many people expect the inner voice to sound loud and certain from the beginning. And in truth, it begins as a whisper, a barely noticeable flicker beneath the surface of thought. It can be drowned out by doubt, by urgency, by the inner noise that we mistake for clarity. That's why cultivating stillness is essential. Not just external silence, but internal space. Time to sit with a question. Time to breathe before reacting. Time to ask and wait. Not wait with frustration, but wait with reverence. The ego often wants an immediate answer. It wants resolution, now. But the soul takes its time. Its messages arrive like waves, not like clocks. They come when you're ready to receive, not when you demand them. This is where trust is built. In the gap between question and answer, in the space where silence teaches, you begin to recognize how the ego clings to urgency and how the soul moves with ease. One tool for discernment is the body. The ego speaks to the head, but the inner knowing speaks to the heart, the gut, the whole body. It feels like an opening, like a softening. Even if what it's saying is hard, the body feels its truth. There's a quiet yes beneath the fear. Sometimes the ego will mimic this, offering temporary relief or false confidence. But soon it collapses, because it isn't rooted in depth. It was only protecting its identity, not expanding your essence. The more you practice listening, the clearer it becomes. Like tuning an instrument, the frequency of ego starts to sound different than the frequency of truth. And even when you're unsure, your soul is patient. It does not punish your confusion. It simply waits until you're ready to hear again. Discernment is a skill, not a gift for the few, but a birthright for all. It's developed through presence, through asking, noticing, and allowing, through gently correcting course when you realize you followed fear instead of truth. It's not about getting it right. It's about learning the texture of each voice. The ego is heavy with consequence. The inner knowing is light with purpose. The ego says, if you don't do this, you'll regret it forever. The soul says, this is your path, even if it's not easy. You might hear the ego say you're not good enough. But if you listen deep, you may find a different voice underneath it. A voice saying, you are already whole. You are loved. You are loved, even in your doubt. You do not have to prove anything. The ego resists surrender. The soul moves through surrender. This is why many people feel resistance just before a breakthrough. Because the ego senses it's about to lose its grip. It panics. Fight distracts. But if you stay with the discomfort, something opens. The real voice begins to shine through. It's also important to know that the inner voice doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. It tells you what you need to hear. Sometimes it calls you into silence, solitude, even loss. But it always calls you toward authenticity, toward your truest self. When you follow it, even without knowing the destination, life begins to reorganize around your truth. Not immediately, but inevitably. The more you align with your inner knowing, the more magnetic your life becomes. You draw in what's meant for you. Stop chasing what was never yours. The ego is obsessed with the past and the future. The inner voice lives in the now. So to hear it, you must return to the present moment again and again. Not to escape your thoughts, but to see beyond them. As your awareness grows, you may find they are not two separate voices after all, but two expressions of your being, one rooted in form, the other in spirit. The work is not to silence the ego forever, but to bring it into harmony with the soul, to teach it to serve, not rule, and in doing so, become more whole, more centered, more available to guidance from within and beyond. If spirit guides exist, and if they are truly available to us, then how do we find them? Or rather, how do we allow ourselves to be found? And most people, the beginning is subtle. A sign here, a feeling there, a feeling there. Something shifts, almost imperceptibly, like walking into a room and sensing someone is already there. Developing a relationship with spirit guides isn't like summoning something external. It's more like remembering something that was always with you. A presence that patiently waited for you to notice. This journey begins with intention. Simply saying, I am open to connecting. That quiet willingness opens a door within the soul. And on the other side of that door, your guides are already waiting. Some people experience contact through dreams, others through meditation. Some hear a name in their mind they've never heard before. Others feel a hand on their shoulder with no one in the room. You might notice repeating symbols, a certain animal that keeps appearing, a feather in your path again and again, numbers that follow you, unexplainable synchronicities that nudge your awareness to ask, is this more than chance? Spirit guides often communicate in this way, through signs, dreams, and inner nudges, because they respect your free will. They don't force their presence. They wait for an invitation. And when that invitation comes, they respond gently, consistently. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for meeting your guides. In silence, you create space, not to control what comes through, but to become receptive to what has always been here. You might begin by setting an intention before your meditation, saying inwardly, I am ready to connect with my highest guide. Or simply, who is guiding me? Then let go of expectation. Let the silence show you. Let the stillness reveal what your mind alone cannot find. Sometimes a name will come, sometimes a light or image, sometimes just a deep peace, and knowing that something beyond yourself has arrived. You may also want to keep a journal. Write down dreams, signs, sensations, even if they don't make sense right away. Over time, patterns emerge. A language of the soul starts to unfold. Some people connect with their guides through automatic writing, a process where you relax, open and allow words to come through your hand without conscious thought. It can be surprising what appears on the page, wisdom that seems to come from beyond your everyday mind. It's not about proving anything. It's about experiencing for yourself the possibility that yours are never truly alone. especially one that feels different from normal dreams. Pay attention. Ask yourself, who was with me? What did I feel? What was the message? Often the dreams are invitations, clues from your guides that they're reaching out. Developing a relationship takes time. Like any relationship, it deepens with trust. You don't need proof. You need presence. You don't need a clear face or name. You need openness and heart. Some people feel drawn to light beings, some to ancestral spirit, some to animal guides. There is no right or wrong way to connect, only what resonates for you. You might even ask your guide to give you a sign, and then let it go. Don't chase it. Let it arrive in its own time. When it does, your whole body will know. There will be a sense of, yes, this is it. As you walk this path, your relationship with your guides will shift. From curiosity to communion, from question to conversation. You may begin to feel them not just in moments of meditation, but in daily life, in decisions, in signs, in the quiet moments between actions. Eventually, they become part of you, not separate entities, but reflections of the divine working through your life. And you begin to trust not only their voice, but your own ability to hear it. In building this relationship, patience is essential. Guides do not operate on a human timetable. They appear when the soul is ready, not always when the ego wants them to. This is why stillness is so powerful. When you quiet the noise of the world, and even your own mind, you create space for a different frequency to reach you. The frequency of the unseen, the felt, the deeply known. Many people try too hard. They chase signs, demand visions, seek proof. But spirit moves in surrender, not control, and softness, not in force. When you relax and simply allow the possibility that you are being guided, the experience becomes real. It's not about dramatic encounters. Often, it's a whisper in the wind. A sentence in a book that answers a question you hadn't yet spoken aloud. A sudden sense of comfort when you feel lost. This is how guides walk with us. Subtly, consistently, and yet always with a depth that transcends language. Symbols play a big role in communication with spirit guides. This is because symbols bypass the analytical mind. They speak directly to the soul. If you find a recurring symbol, an animal, a number, an object, it's worth pausing to feel into its meaning. Not just what it means generally, but what it means to you, because spirit will speak to you in the language of your own heart. Not just universal symbols, but personal ones. For one person, a hawk might represent freedom. For another, it might be protection, or a reminder of someone they've lost. Trust your own resonance. That's how your guides will most often speak to you, in the ways that only you would understand. Another way to connect is through guided journeys. These are meditations specifically designed to help you meet your guide. They might walk you through a forest, a temple, a staircase, until you arrive at a place where your guide appeared. Some see vivid images, some feel a presence, some simply receive a message in the form of a thought or knowing. The experience doesn't need to be dramatic to be real. It only needs to feel true. And over time, this truth deepens. You might ask your guide questions during these moments. What do I need to know right now? What message do you have for me? Or simply, are you here? And then listen, not with your ears, but with your being. Sometimes the answer is a word, sometimes an image, sometimes just a presence. That presence can speak more loudly than any voice. Many people worry that they're making it up, that they're imagining things. But imagination is a doorway. It's how unconscious and the divine communicate. Trust what arises, even if it feels subtle or strange, especially if it feels loving, wise and calm. As your connection deepens, you may find that guidance becomes part of your daily life. You begin to ask your guides for help with decisions, to show you signs, to walk with you in difficult times. And when you forget, when you feel disconnected, all it takes is a moment of reconnection, a breath, a silent ask, a moment of stillness. Your guides are never far. They are not limited by time or space. They do require rituals to hear you. Only presence. Only sincerity. The more you connect, the more your trust grows. The more you try, the more the connection deepens. It becomes a sacred friendship, built not on belief, but on experience. You might also find your guides helping you through other people. A stranger says the exact words you needed to hear. A song comes on at the perfect moment. A book falls off the shelf with a message just for you. They are not limited to one way of reaching you. They work with life itself. They move through synchronicity, through patterns, through energy. Because in truth, they are not separate from the divine field that connects everything. And as you grow in awareness, you begin to realize the guidance was always there. You were always being nudged, protected, inspired. You just didn't always know how to hear it. Now you're remembering. Now you're learning to listen. And once you learn that, really learn it, life begins to feel different. Less random, more meaningful. As though someone is walking beside you. And in truth, they are. One of the most powerful ways to build trust with your spirit guides is to keep a journal of your experiences. This creates a living record of your journey, one that you can return to when doubt creeps in. Write down your dreams, your intuitions, your synchronicities. Even the smallest things, a phrase that pops into your head, a feeling you can't shake, an image that repeats. Over time, you'll notice patterns. You'll start to see how messages come to you, how your body reacts when something is true, how your energy shifts when you're in alignment. This is part of your unique spiritual vocabulary. No two people speak with their guides in exactly the same way, and that's the beauty of it. You're not following a template, you're cultivating a real living relationship. And just like any relationship, it needs attention, not perfection, just presence. Show up with curiosity, not pressure. Ask without demanding, receive without doubting. In time, you may begin to recognize your guide's energy signature. This is something deeper than voice or image. It's a felt presence, a vibration that becomes familiar, like recognizing the essence of a friend. Even if they don't speak, even if they're in a different form, some people feel this as warmth in the chest, or tingles on the skin, or tingles on the skin, or a quiet in the mind, as if time slows down for a moment. It's subtle, but unmistakable once you tune in. You may even receive names, or images that repeat over time. Some people connect with beings who call themselves by ancient or symbolic names. Others simply refer to their guide as my helper, my guardian, or the loving one. The label is not important, the connection is. As you develop this bond, your inner world becomes more vibrant. Life takes on layers of meaning that weren't there before. You realize that you are never truly alone, that there are intelligences walking with you, loving you, cheering for your growth. And this relationship is not just for spiritual insight. It's also deeply practical. Your guides can help you make decisions. They can steer you away from harm. They can help you see the truth beneath the surface. They often do so by enhancing your own inner knowing. They don't override your will. They illuminate the path, but they never force you to walk it. This is how you grow, through choice, through experience, through learning to trust yourself. And when you make mistakes, your guides do not judge. They offer compassion, no condemnation. They see your soul's journey from a wider perspective. They know that even the detours have value. This is why building a relationship with them is also a process of self-healing. As you open to their love, you start to remember your worth. You start to believe that maybe, just maybe, you are guided because you matter, that your life has meaning beyond what you can see, that your presence here is not accident. Sometimes people worry that they're not spiritual enough to connect with guides, that they're too skeptical, too busy, too broken. But spirit does not require purity, it requires willingness. A single moment of openness can be the doorway. A whispered "I'm ready" can echo across dimensions, and the response may not come in the way you expect. It may be quiet, it may come through a dream, a chance encounter, a sudden wave of peace. But it will come, because the very act of reaching out shifts your vibration, and your guides are already tuned to that frequency. In the end, developing a relationship with spirit guides is less about learning new skills, and more about remembering something ancient, a connection that was never lost, only forgotten. You are not summoning strangers, you are reunited with allies. across lifetimes, who knew you before you were born, who see the greatness within you, even when you cannot. And as your relationship deepens, you begin to study their guidance. You don't just hear their messages, you live them. You become more compassionate, more courageous, more aligned with your soul's purpose. Because that's what true guidance does. It doesn't give you all the answers. It helps you remember who you are, so that you can become the answer. And in that remembering, something miraculous happens. The line between you and your guides begins to blur. You no longer feel like you're receiving messages from out there, but awakening wisdom from within. This is the dance of communion, a partnership between the seen and the unseen, between the human and the divine, between your soul and the soul family walking beside you. Always here, always listening, always loving. There is a voice within you that is older than time. It does not shout, it does not argue, it speaks in stillness, like a soft ripple across the surface of a deep, quiet lake. This voice is not your thoughts, not your fears, not your habits, not your inherited beliefs. It is the voice beneath the voices, the one that waits patiently, whispering truth, even when you are too distracted to hear it. This is the voice of the soul, the part of you that has never been lost, only hidden. It carries your blueprint, the memory of why you came here and what you came to become. Tuning inward to hear this voice is not about striving. It's about surrender. It's not about adding more noise, but about creating space for silence. Because the soul doesn't compete with the world's volume. It waits for you to turn down the dial. And so the journey inward begins with quiet, with stepping away from distraction, with making time to be still, even for a few moments each day. You might begin with simple breath awareness, not forcing anything, just observing the rise and fall, the inhale, the exhale, letting the mind soften like snow melting in the sun. Then you listen, not for words necessarily, but for feeling, that poor resonance, but gentle nudges that move from your chest to your throat to your knowing. The voice of the soul is often subtle. It may sound like a quiet yes when something aligns, or a tightness in your gut when something is off. Quiet. It may come as a sudden clarity after confusion, the truth you didn't think your way into, you simply knew it. That's the nature of soul truth. It doesn't need to be proven. It feels ancient, immediate, all at once, like remembering something you've always known. But tuning inward is not just about hearing this voice. It's also about clearing the static, because the soul is always speaking. We just can't always hear it through the noise. And that noise is real. It's the voice of fear, the voice of conditioning, the looping thoughts of self-doubt and over-analysis. This is why inner work matters, why we practice meditation, shadow work, journaling, and silence. Not to become someone new, but to clear away what we are not. The more you observe your inner landscape, the more you begin to notice the different voices inside you. The one that criticizes, the one that compares, the one that panics or avoids or chases, and then the one that simply is, the still, loving, that's true, loving, but true. That's the soul's voice, and the more time you spend with it, the more familiar it becomes. It begins to feel like home, like an inner compass pointing you back to yourself. But some people fear tuning inward because they are afraid of what they'll find. They think their inner world is too messy, too painful, too dark. But the soul is not afraid of your shadows. In fact, he is. Through your shadows that your light is most clearly revealed. The shadow work, the practice of facing the parts of yourself you've rejected, is one of the deepest ways to hear your soul. Because when you embrace your pain, your fear, your anger, you become whole. And in that wholeness, the soul speaks louder. The solitude also helps. Not loneliness, but solitude. Time without distraction, time to be with yourself. To walk in nature, to sit with a candle, to write without agenda. In solitude, the soul's voice rises. Not because it was silent before, but because you finally made room to listen. And as you begin to trust this voice, something beautiful happens. You stop seeking so much outside yourself. You stop looking for signs in every direction. Because the most important guidance is now coming from within. Your decisions become more aligned, your actions more intentional. You start living from a place of inner authority, not ego but essence. The voice of the soul does not control, it invites. It doesn't rush, it unfolds. It doesn't shame, it uplifts. When you tune inward and truly hear it, you realize this voice has always been with you, even in your darkest moments, even when you felt lost, broken, or alone. The soul whispered, "Keep going. There is more for you. You are not what happened to you." That whisper may have been drowned out at times, but it never stopped speaking, because your soul is loyal. It remembers who you are, even when you forget. To deepen this connection, many turn to practices that cultivate stillness and presence. These aren't about becoming spiritual in appearance. They're about becoming quiet enough to hear what has always been there. The soul voice is constant. It is we who come and go from its awareness. Meditation is one of the clearest portals. Not because it changes the soul, but because it clears the debris between your mind and your essence. It trains you to watch thoughts without becoming them, to feel emotion without drowning in it, to return again and again to center. But meditation is not the only path inward. There are many ways to commune with the soul. Art, music, movement, silence, prayer. Sometimes the soul speaks when we paint without thinking, when we dance without performing, when we write words that surprise even ourselves. Each soul speaks a slightly different language. Some hear it clearly in nature, others in sacred text or sound or stillness. What matters is not the method, but the sincerity of your listening. Teaching. When you tune inward consistently, the relationship deepens. It begins to feel like a dialogue, not just a whisper in the dark. You ask questions and sometimes the answers come not in words but in a feeling of certainty, or in synchronicity, or in a deep inner knowing that doesn't need external confirmation. This is a sacred unfolding. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be teaching. It can only be allowed, like the blooming of a flower that trusts the sun will rise. There are days when the soul feels close, luminous, undeniable, and there are days when you may feel disconnected, when doubt creeps in, when silence feels empty. These too are part of the journey inward. Not every moment will be clarity, some will be testing, teaching you to listen even when there's no answer, to stay open even when you feel alone. That's where trust is born, not in the obvious sign, but in the quiet persistence of your listening, the willingness to return to stillness again and again. No matter what greets you, the soul's voice is not there to impress or entertain. It's not loud because it doesn't need to be. Its power is in its purity. When it speaks, something inside you stands still, and everything else, the fears, the noise, the pretending, falls away. You may notice that the more you listen, the more aligned your outer life becomes. Not because you're controlling outcomes, but because your choices begin to flow from truth rather than reaction. You walk away from situations that drain you, not from fear, but from clarity. You say no to things that are not meant for you, not with guilt, but with calm. You begin to honor the quiet urgings of the soul, even when they make no logical sense, even when they lead you into the unknown. Because something in you knows deeply that the unknown is sacred territory. It is often there, in the spaces beyond the mind, where the soul speaks loudest. As you deepen your relationship with your inner voice, you also begin to recognize its tone. It never shames. It never rushes. It never forces you to prove yourself. It guides gently. It nudges lovingly. And when it speaks with urgency, it still carries peace. That is how you know it is real. Any voice that manipulates, belittles, or controls is not your soul. It is something learned, not something eternal. This discernment, knowing the tone of your truth, is one of the great gifts of inner listening. It becomes your compass when life gets loud, your anchor when the world feels chaotic. And as you trust this voice more and more, it grows stronger in your awareness. Not because it changed, but because you did. You became quieter, more open, more willing to listen without needing immediate answers. Eventually, something profound happens. The line between your soul's voice and your life begins to blur. You stop seeking guidance because you are living it. Each breath, Each word, each step becomes infused with soul presence. Teaching, you realize the voice is not something separate from you. It is you, the real you, the real you, the one you've always been underneath all the noise. And this is where the journey in truly brings you. Not to someone new, but to the most ancient version of yourself. The one who remembers, the one who knows, the one who knows, the one who trusts the way, even in the dark. And so, as we journey deeper within, we begin to realize something profound. The voice of the soul was never lost. It was always present. We just needed to remove the layers that hid it. As we clear the noise, we discover that we've always known the way. The only thing standing in our way is the ego, which constantly seeks to define, label, and control. The soul doesn't need labels or definitions. It simply is. And the more we align with it, the more our life unfolds naturally. We no longer need to force, to strive, or to manipulate, because we are finally in tune with our true essence. The path becomes clear, not because we planned it, but because we surrendered to its unfolding. We trust the process because the soul's voice has never led us astray. And as we listen, we begin to notice the subtle miracles, synchronicities, moments of pure alignment, where everything feels effortless. These are signs that we are in harmony with our soul's purpose. They remind us that we are not alone in this journey, that the soul's wisdom is always guiding us, even when we're unaware. In these moments, we realize that life is not something we control. It is something we experience. We are the observers, the receivers, the channels through which the soul expresses itself. When we align with this truth, life takes on a deeper meaning. It's no longer about achieving external success, but about embracing the internal peace that comes from knowing we are on the right path. Yet even in our moments of clarity, the ego will continue to try and regain control. It will whisper doubts and fears. It will try to convince us that we are not enough, that we need more. But when we recognize the ego's voice for what it is, we can choose not to engage. We remember that the soul's voice is not loud, but it is always true. In those times, silence becomes our ally. It is in the silence that we hear the deepest truths. It is in the silence that we find our connection to the eternal. And it is in the silence that we can feel the presence of our soul guiding us back to center. As we continue this journey, we come to understand that the voice of the soul is not something we seek outside of ourselves. It is within, always. It is a quiet companion that walks with us, reminding us of who we truly are. And as we walk this path of inward discovery, we begin to see that the soul's guidance is available to all. We simply need to listen. The soul doesn't speak in words, but in feelings, in impulses, in knowing. It speaks in moments of clarity, in flashes of insight, in a deep sense of inner peace. It doesn't rush us or push us. It simply waits for us to listen. And when we do, we begin to experience life in a new way, not as a struggle, but as a dance with the divine. This dance is not about control or force. It is about allowing the rhythm of the soul to guide us. We begin to trust the flow of life, knowing that each step is part of a larger, sacred plan. And even in the moments when the path is unclear, we trust that we are being led. The soul's voice becomes clearer with practice. The more we listen, the more we attune ourselves to its frequency. And the more we align with our soul's guidance, the more our lives reflect the truth of who we are. In this alignment, we find peace, joy, and a deep sense of purpose. This too, the gift of tuning inward, to hear the voice of the soul. It is a gift that is always available to us. A gift that is only waiting for us to stop and listen. In this stillness, we find everything we need. We find our truth, our peace, and our connection to the divine. And so, as we close this chapter, let us remember this. The voice of the soul is always with us, guiding us, loving us, and reminding us of who we truly are. We need only listen. And in listening, we will find the answers to all our questions. For the soul knows the way, always. The key to understanding whether spirit guides are projections of the self lies in our ability to perceive the difference between external influences and internal voices. At times our minds can become clouded with biases, fears, and conditioning, making it challenging to distinguish between what we want to hear and what we actually need to hear. But as we delve deeper into our spiritual practices, we begin to develop discernment. This discernment is what allows us to sift through the layers of our psyche and recognize the true guidance that arises from a place of authenticity. One powerful tool in this discernment process is meditation. When we enter a quiet, receptive state of mind, we allow the internal noise of daily life to fade into the background. In this space, we can listen more clearly to the subtle whispers of our inner voice. If we are seeking guidance from an external spirit guide, it's important to approach the process with patience and awareness. The challenge is to remain open, yet grounded in our connection to the present moment. It's often said that our intuition is a quiet voice that speaks in moments of stillness, while the voice of fear and the ego tends to be loud and insistent. The more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more we are able to differentiate between these voices. Intuition, the inner knowing that comes from a place of wisdom, is subtle and calm. Ego, on the other hand, often tries to control, manipulate, or distort the messages we receive. By cultivating a practice of listening, we can better understand the nature of the messages we receive and determine whether they are coming from a place of authentic guidance or fear-based projections. A helpful way to distinguish between ego and intuition is to observe the quality of the message. True spiritual guidance tends to feel expansive, uplifting, and aligned with the highest good. It may challenge us, but it does so in a way that promotes growth and understanding. Ego-based messages, in contrast, often create feelings of limitation and doubt. When we encounter guidance that feels restricting or disempowering, it's often a sign that it's not coming from the highest source. Another useful technique for recognizing the nature of our guides is to ask for signs. Spirit guides, whether external or internal, often communicate through symbols, synchronicity, and dreams. These signs serve as clues to help us understand the messages they are trying to convey. The key is to approach these signs with an open heart and mind, allowing them to guide us without clinging too tightly to specific expectations. When we trust the process and remain receptive, we can start to see how our internal world and external experiences begin to align. In doing so, we may come to realize that the guides we are seeking have always been with us, in the form of inner wisdom and insight, waiting to be uncovered. In addition to the techniques of mindfulness and meditation, dream work can also provide valuable insight into the nature of our spirit guides. Dreams are often seen as a bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind, providing a space where our inner world can be explored. In many cases, spirit guides appear in our dreams as symbolic figures, offering messages or guidance that may not be immediately clear. By paying attention to the symbols and messages in our dreams, we can begin to understand whether the guides we encounter are projections of our own psyche or separate beings communicating with us. This requires careful reflection and the willingness to examine the deeper layers of the unconscious. To help clarify the difference between projection and external guidance, let's explore the concept of the inner archetype in more depth. An archetype is a universal symbol that represents a fundamental aspect of the human experience. For example, the archetype of the wise old man is often represented by a spiritual guide or mentor figure. This archetype can manifest in various forms across cultures, as a sage, an elder, or a guru. When we encounter such figures in our spiritual practices, we may be seeing a projection of this inner archetype, a reflection of the wisdom and guidance that already exists within us. In this way, the guide may not be an external being, but rather an expression of our own inner wisdom. On the other hand, an external guide may appear to us in a form that is distinctly separate from ourselves. This guide may not necessarily represent an inner archetype, but could instead embody qualities or energies that we are drawn to or seeking in our life. For example, an angelic figure might appear to someone who is experiencing a deep need for comfort, protection, or guidance. The form that the guide takes may reflect the qualities that the individual is in need of at that moment, offering them the support they are seeking. Whether this figure is an external entity or an internal projection, the guidance received can still be valuable and transformative. The distinction between external guides and internal projections is not always clear-cut. In many cases, the two may blend together, creating a dynamic interplay between the external and internal realms. This is why it's important to approach the process of working with spirit guides with flexibility and openness. Whether they are projections of the psyche or external being, the ultimate goal is to integrate the wisdom they offer and allow it to guide us toward greater self-awareness and spiritual growth. As we move further into understanding the dynamic between spirit guides and projections, we must also psychological frameworks shape our perception of these entities. One such framework is Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious. Jung believed that, beyond our personal experiences, there exists a deep well of shared human experience and archetypes. These archetypes represent universal patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that have emerged across all cultures and time periods. For example, the archetype of the mother can manifest in various ways, symbolizing nurturing, protection, and care. These archetypes are embedded in our psyche and often influence how we perceive external guidance and interactions with spirit guides. When we consider spirit guides, we may be tapping into these universal archetypes, manifesting as figures such as the wise sage, protector, healer, or teacher. However, it's crucial to remember that these figures may not be separate entities, but instead may be projections of our own inner archetypal energies. The wise sage, for example, could represent a deep part of ourselves that holds wisdom and guidance, while the protector may symbolize our inner strength and desire for safety. By understanding these projections, we can start to see how they reflect parts of our own consciousness, pointing us toward the wisdom we already hold within. It's important to note that projection does not negate the validity of the experience of guidance. Whether the figure we perceive as a spirit guide is an external entity or an internal projection, the wisdom and lessons imparted are still real. What matters most is how the guidance impacts us and leads us toward deeper self-awareness and transformation. By embracing the possibility that our guides may be projections, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of the self and our connection to the greater whole. Another important aspect to consider is how our beliefs shape our perception of spirit guides. What we believe to be true about the world, ourselves, and the nature of reality influences how we interpret our experiences with spirit guides. For example, someone who believes in angels may be more likely to perceive guidance in the form of angelic beings, while someone who follows a more shamanic path may encounter animal spirits or ancestral guides. These beliefs, while shaped by personal experience and culture, also provide a lens through which we filter the messages we receive. If we believe that spirit guides are external beings, we may interpret any signs or experiences as interactions with these beings. On the other hand, if we believe that spirit guides are projections of the self, we may interpret the same signs as expressions of our own subconscious mind. What's fascinating is that both interpretations can coexist. The experience of guidance can be seen as both a spiritual encounter with an external being and as a reflection of our inner world, depending on the framework we apply. Ultimately, the way we choose to interpret these experiences is not as important as how we use the guidance to grow and evolve. Whether we see our guides as external or internal, the messages they provide can still lead us toward greater alignment with our true selves. To further explore this concept, let's look at the phenomenon of synchronicity, a term coined by Carl Jung. Synchronicity refers to meaningful coincidences that occur when events align in such a way that they seem to carry significant, often mystical, meaning. These occurrences often challenge our understanding of time and space, suggesting that there may be a deeper interconnectedness between all things. When it comes to spirit guides, synchronicities can be seen as signs from these guides reinforcing the messages they are attempting to communicate. For example, you might be thinking about a specific question or issue, and shortly afterward you come across a book, a conversation, or an event that seems to provide the answer. These seemingly coincidental events can be interpreted as the work of spirit guides, helping to point us in the right direction. Yet from a psychological perspective, synchronicities can also be seen as projections of our own psyche, drawing our attention to patterns that reflect our inner thoughts and desires. In this sense, the external world becomes a mirror for our internal world, and synchronicities serve as a reflection of the thoughts, beliefs, and intentions we hold deep within. In either case, the experience of synchronicity can be deeply transformative, guiding us toward greater awareness and understanding of ourselves. It's a reminder that the external and internal realms are not separate but are in fact deeply interconnected. As we continue to explore the relationship between spirit guides and projections, it becomes clear that these two concepts are not mutually exclusive. In many ways, they complement each other, offering us multiple perspectives on our spiritual journey. By recognizing that the guides we encounter may be reflections of our own consciousness, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of the self and the universe. At the same time, By remaining open to the possibility of external guides, we allow ourselves to receive wisdom and support from sources beyond our own awareness. This balance between internal and external guidance is key to navigating the spiritual path with clarity and trust. When spirit guides and the inner voice speak in harmony, the experience is profound. The alignment between the two creates a sense of deep clarity, where messages from the guides resonate with the truths already known in the soul. It's as though a confirmation of the inner knowing occurs, a reminder that we are not alone in our journey, and that the guidance we seek is already embedded within us. This alignment is a state of flow, where the mind, heart, and spirit work together toward a shared purpose. In these moments, our intuition and guidance from spirit seem to merge seamlessly, creating a sense of peace and alignment that propels us forward on our path. It's a profound experience of being in tune with both the spiritual and personal realms, a perfect synchrony between inner and outer guidance. However, this harmony is not always the case. At times, the voice of the spirit guides and the inner voice may seem to conflict, causing confusion and uncertainty. This conflict can create a feeling of being pulled in two directions at once, torn between the wisdom of the guides and the conflicting emotions or thoughts of the inner voice. In these moments, it can feel as though there is no clear answer, as if we are facing a crossroads with no visible signpost. The key to resolving these conflicts lies in discernment. Discernment is the practice of tuning into the subtle differences between the two voices, learning to distinguish between genuine guidance and the influences of fear, ego, or conditioning. This is not always easy, as the ego often masquerades as the inner voice, offering suggestions that sound logical, practical, or familiar, but ultimately lead us away from our true path. The spirit guides, on the other hand, often communicate in ways that feel gentle, calm, and expansive, even if the message challenges our current beliefs or comfort zones. One of the first steps in discerning between these two voices is cultivating self-awareness. This involves learning to quiet the mind and tune into the deeper layers of our being, allowing us to separate the chatter of the ego from the stillness of the soul. In moments of inner conflict, it's important to step back and examine the source of the guidance being received. Is the voice coming from a place of fear or desire for control, or is it rooted in love, trust, and openness? These questions can help clarify whether the guidance coming from the spirit guides or from the inner projections of the ego. Another helpful tool in resolving conflicts between the inner voice and spirit guidance is to focus on the emotional tone of the messages. When the spirit guides speak, the messages often evoke a sense of peace, calm, and empowerment, even in the face of uncertainty. Their words encourage growth, healing, and connection to a higher purpose, even if they challenge our current understanding. On the other hand, when the ego speaks, the message may be tinged with fear, doubt, or the need to control the outcome. The ego often focuses on what is safe, familiar, and certain, while the spirit guides invite us to step into the unknown, trusting that we will be supported. In cases where both the inner voice and spirit guides seem to speak in different directions, it may be helpful to ask for clarity. This can be done through prayer, meditation, or simply by taking a moment of stillness to reconnect with the heart space. In these moments of quiet reflection, the true message often emerges, offering a solution or path forward that brings both peace and clarity. Trusting the process of seek clarity and allowing the answers to unfold in their own time can ease the inner conflict and bring resolution. There may also be times when both the inner voice and spirit guides offer seemingly contradictory advice, and this can create a deeper sense of confusion. In these cases, it's important to consider the larger picture and trust that both forms of guidance are pointing toward the same end goal, even if the paths differ. The conflict between these two voices may be part of the journey itself, a means of testing our trust, faith, and willingness to listen to the deeper wisdom that resides within. The resolution may not always come immediately, but with patience and self-trust, the underlying harmony between the two voices will become clear. Sometimes the purpose of this inner conflict is not to provide an immediate answer, but to encourage growth, self-discovery, and a deeper understanding of our own desires, fears, and motivations. It's through the tension between the inner voice and the spirit guides that we are given the opportunity to strengthen our discernment and learn how to navigate the complexities complexities of life with greater wisdom. This conflict, while uncomfortable, is an essential part of the spiritual journey, offering us the chance to refine our connection to both our inner truth and the guidance we receive from the unseen realms. Ultimately, the alignment of the inner voice and spirit guides is not about seeking perfection or always receiving clear, unwavering guidance. It's about learning to trust the process, even in moments of confusion, and to embrace the lessons that arise from the inner conflicts we face. By allowing both voices to speak, and by learning to discern their true sources, we become more attuned to the wisdom of the universe, finding our way forward with greater clarity and confidence. In addition to the discernment between the inner voice and spirit guides, there's also the factor of timing. Often, the conflict between these two sources of guidance can arise when the timing feels off. Sometimes, our inner voice may urge us to take immediate action, while the spirit guides suggest patience or waiting for more clarity. This discrepancy can lead to frustration as we feel torn between the urge to move forward and the guidance to hold back. It's important to recognize that both messages may be valid, but they may reflect different perspectives on the situation. The inner voice, in its urgency, may be pushing for immediate action, while the spirit guides are asking us to trust the process and wait for the right moment. This tension between the voices often becomes a test of patience and trust. By practicing patience, we can learn to understand the deeper rhythms of life and how to discern when action is truly needed. There may be times when taking a step back, rather than pushing forward, provides the clarity and space for a more aligned decision. In these moments, the conflict itself can become a gift, teaching us the art of stillness and trust in the unseen forces that guide us. Another key aspect to consider is the role of resistance. When we feel resistance to the guidance we are receiving, it's often an indication that we are not fully aligned with our own truth. Resistance may come from the ego, which seeks comfort and control, or it may come from the fear of the unknown that often arises when we are asked to take a leap of faith. It's important to examine the source of this resistance and ask ourselves why we are reluctant to follow the guidance we are receiving. Is it because the guidance challenges our current understanding or forces us out of our comfort zone? Or is it because the inner voice is attempting to protect us from potential harm or discomfort? By exploring these questions, we can begin to differentiate between resistance that is healthy and protective and resistance that is rooted in fear or ego. When the spirit guides offer guidance that feels uncomfortable but leads us toward growth, it's often a sign that we are being asked to move beyond our current limitations. In these moments, it's essential to trust that the discomfort is a necessary part of the process and that the rewards of following the guidance will outweigh the initial resistance. On the other hand, if the inner voice is pushing us toward a decision that feels inauthentic or misaligned with our values, it may be important to pause and reconsider the path forward. In these cases, the inner voice may be coming from a place of fear or desire to avoid discomfort, rather than from a place of authentic knowing. The spirit guides, in contrast, rarely guide us toward choices that are based on fear or ego-driven desires. Their guidance, while challenging at times, always points us toward our highest good and the fulfillment of our soul's purpose. As we develop the ability to recognize the source of our resistance, we also strengthen our capacity for discernment and trust in the guidance we receive. By examining both the inner voice and the messages from spirit guides through the lens of alignment and authenticity, we can begin to navigate the complexities of life with greater clarity. It's through this process that we learn to trust ourselves, to trust the guidance we receive, and to trust the divine timing of our journey. One powerful tool to aid in resolving conflicts between the inner voice and spirit guidance is journaling. Writing down the messages we receive from both sources allows us to examine them more objectively and track patterns over time. Journaling also helps us process emotions, thoughts, and fears, providing a safe space for reflection and insight. As we review our journal entries, we can begin to identify recurring themes or messages that offer clarity and guidance. By putting pen to paper, we not only clarify the guidance we receive, but we also create a record of our spiritual journey that we can revisit when needed. This practice of journaling can also help us release any attachments to specific outcomes, allowing us to surrender to the flow of guidance. When we let go of our need for certainty and control, we create space for the universe to work in alignment with our highest good. By trusting the guidance, even in moments of uncertainty or conflict, we empower ourselves to move forward with confidence and peace. In the and spirit guides is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. It's a dynamic process that invites us to continually refine our ability to listen and trust the wisdom that arises within us and around us. By embracing both the inner voice and spirit guides as integral parts of our spiritual path, we can navigate the complexities of life with greater awareness and alignment. This journey is about learning to harmonize the wisdom of the inner and outer realms, and to trust that both are leading us toward the unfolding of our soul's true purpose. As we continue on this journey of inner exploration, it's essential to recognize that both the spirit guides and the inner voice are part of the same unified consciousness. At the deepest level, they are not two separate entities, but two expressions of the same divine force that flows through us all. The spirit guides are here to remind us of our connection to something larger than ourselves, to help us access wisdom that transcends the individual ego. The inner voice, on the other hand, is a direct communication from the soul, speaking through our thoughts, feelings, and intuition. While they may appear different on the surface, both are guiding us toward the same truth, the truth of our own divinity and the path that aligns us with our highest potential. This understanding brings a sense of unity to the experience of guidance, helping us to move beyond the duality of inner conflict and into a place of acceptance. When we see the inner voice and the spirit guides as two sides of the same coin, we can embrace the wisdom they offer without feeling torn or confused. This shift in perspective allows us to cultivate a deeper sense of trust in both the guidance we receive and the process of growth itself. The more we integrate this understanding, the less we will be swayed by moments of doubt or confusion, knowing that every message is part of our soul's evolution. One of the most profound ways to deepen our connection to both the spirit guides and the inner voice is through the practice of silence. In the quiet spaces of our lives, we can hear the subtle whispers of our soul and the guidance of the unseen realms. Silence creates a container where both voices can be heard clearly, without the interference of the ego, fear, or distractions from the external world. This practice of silence can take many forms, from sitting in meditation to spending time in nature or engaging in creative activities that quiet the mind. The more we cultivate silence in our lives, the more attuned we become to the subtle guidance that is always available to us. During these moments of stillness, it becomes easier to distinguish between the voice of the ego and the voice of the soul. The ego speaks loudly and demands attention, often filled with urgency, worry, and doubt. In contrast, the voice of the soul is calm, centered, and unhurried, offering gentle nudges and insights that resonate with a deep sense of truth and peace. Through silence, we can also hear the messages from our spirit guides, which often come in the form of symbols, feelings, or intuitions rather than words. These messages may not always be immediately clear, but with practice and patience, their meaning becomes more apparent. Another important aspect of integrating the guidance of both the spirit guides and the inner voice is the willingness to embrace uncertainty. At times, the guidance we receive may not come with a clear, definitive answer. Instead, it may feel like a gentle push toward a direction, with no immediate clarity on where it will lead. This is where trust becomes crucial. Trust in the process, trust in ourselves, and trust in the divine timing of our lives. When we embrace uncertainty, we open ourselves up to the flow of life, allowing the guidance to unfold in its own time, without forcing an outcome. The spirit guides and inner voice are always with us, guiding us with wisdom and love, even in times of uncertainty. They are not here to dictate every decision, but to offer insights and perspectives that help us align with our true path. By releasing the need for certainty and control, we create space for the guidance to come through naturally and effortlessly. We learn to trust that every step we take is part of a greater plan, even if we cannot yet see the whole picture. As we move forward, it becomes increasingly clear that the tension between the inner voice and the spirit guides is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. This tension is an invitation to deepen our understanding of ourselves, to strengthen our connection to the divine, and to learn how to listen more attentively to the guidance that is always available to us. The more we lean into this process, the more we realize that the guidance is not separate from us, it is us, unfolding in each moment, leading us toward greater alignment with our true nature. By embracing both the inner voice and the spirit guides, we step into a place of greater clarity, peace, and empowerment. We come to understand that we are not alone in our journey, that we are supported and guided every not see the path ahead. In this realization, we find the strength to move forward with trust, knowing that we are exactly where we need to be and that every step we take brings us closer to our highest potential.